Hello, friends. Welcome to week 2 of Win from Within. I'm so excited to build upon the weight loss and thought management tools which were introduced last week. With that being said, I'm going to share my screen with you and we are going to get started. Okay, friends, as a quick recap, last week we learned that the reason why people are overweight is because they are so out of alignment with how they're feeling within their hunger signals and how much they're eating, the reason why they're eating, and the why. So we introduced the hunger scale, we introduced the 4 different types of eating, we started to ask ourselves why we're choosing to eat what we're eating, and becoming aware of the things that we're putting within our mouths. I invited you to practice journaling and to get very comfortable in becoming accountable with what you're eating and why you're eating it, and to use that journaling page as a way of increasing awareness. Additionally, we talked about doing our thought download work and increasing our awareness as to what's going on within our brain and why we're thinking the things that we're thinking, and just allowing those thoughts to flow without any judgment and really meeting ourselves from a place of compassion and curiosity. Finally, we discussed identifying our compelling reason and understanding why we're getting recommitted to a weight loss journey. It's very important that you understand what's driving your desire to lose weight so that we can increase our opportunity for success. So that being said, we're going to build upon those foundations right now, and we're going to move into week 2 with a new weight loss tool and a new thought management tool as well. Okay, this week we are going to discuss practicing constraint. Now, constraint simply means that you are exercising discipline. You are choosing behaviors purposefully, and that you are kind of restricting yourself with those impulses. Okay, it's a very intentional practice. Now, for those of you who are married or in committed relationships, you know what constraint is. Even though we see lots of attracted people walking around in the store or on the sidewalk or, at a shopping mall, even though they're attractive, when we think that they're attractive, we aren't just going to go up and randomly give them a kiss. We practice constraint with our choices because we're in a married relationship or we're in a committed relationship. Likewise, when you're shopping at a department store and you see a really beautiful purse and you think, that's an amazing purse. I think I want that purse. You don't just simply grab it, snatch it, and walk out the store. You make a decision. You practice constraint. You make a choice of either purchasing the purse or leaving the purse there at the store. We don't go in and just shoplift whatever we desire because we simply want it. We have restrictions. We exercise discipline. We use judgment in making these choices. Likewise, as we move forward with our foods and the foods that we're eating this week, we're going to start to practice restraint. When it comes to our food management, we're going to be exercising constraint by honoring our commitments, honoring a food plan that we're going to be creating. We're going to be very purposeful in deciding what we're going to eat, when we're going to eat, and how much we're going to eat of this food item. We're going to practice telling ourselves no. We're going to start getting comfortable with discomfort. And the reason why we're doing all this is because we know that constraint ultimately supports our end goal of losing weight. So this week is all about making that shift, not only in accounting for what we are eating, but being very purposeful in planning what we're eating. Now, throughout the weeks to come, I'm going to refer to this as either a food plan or a protocol. And what a protocol simply means is that it's a scheduled list of rules that we choose to follow. It's a discipline. It's a practice. We're going to be identifying what we're going to eat, when we're going to eat this, and how much we're going to eat. I don't want you to get overwhelmed by this thought. We're going to be keeping it very, very simple at this point in time and just get into the daily disciplined routine of planning out our foods. And we're going to do this 24 hours in advance so that we can eliminate the drama and eliminate room for negotiation in knowing what we're going to eat and why we're eating it. Be sure to read your workbook pages that go along with this section because I do a deep dive into the food plan and the protocol creation. And this will set you up for success by reading more of that material and understanding it in greater detail. Now, as you're getting ready to create this food plan 24 hours in advance, you're going to ask yourself, what am I currently eating and what are my current eating habits that I want to change? How can I level this up? How can I make better choices? You're going to ask yourself, am I eating with purpose and intention? Am I eating so that I'm fueling my body rather than coming from a space of like a joy eat, a fog eat, or a storm eat? And then you're also going to ask yourself, how does this food serve me? Does it make me feel good? Does it give me good energy? Or is it short-term, kind of like a super quick high because it's, a poor quality food and then I'm going to experience a drop and a crash? Or am I choosing those better foods that are going to give me long, slow, and sustained energy throughout my day? So ask yourself those questions as we move forward in making our food plan and creating a way to support yourself in success. Within your workbook, I've given you an example of exactly how you could follow a food plan. There is a sample of a day where a protocol is laid out with a breakfast, lunch, and a dinner. Additionally, I've provided you with food choices, high quality proteins, vegetables, fruits, grains, and really good fats to draw from. So I want you to start experimenting with these better quality foods and choosing them with purpose so that you can be making that shift and starting to experience progress and true results from being intentional with what you're eating and why you're eating it. Likewise, we're going to be identifying exactly when you're going to be having your breakfast, your lunch, or your dinner. So use that sample, use that example and that guide as a resource to support you in creating your food plan. Friends, I also want you to be very thoughtful as to how much water you're taking in. Water is so, so important when it comes to our weight loss journey. Water helps us to feel an increase in energy, an increased clarity of thought. It makes us feel full, longer, and it really helps to flush out our system so that we're getting the most benefit from our efforts. Now, you should be drinking about half your body weight in ounces with water. So, for example, if you weigh 140 pounds, then you should be consuming at a minimum 70 ounces of water. It's a very easy math formula, and it's important that we're tracking this. So, buy yourself either a hydro flask or maybe a gallon of water or use a pitcher. Find some way of being able to easily measure the amount of water that you're having within your day, and then just go to that gallon of water or that pitcher and use it as a resource so you can keep it simple and it's easy to log exactly how much water you're taking in each and every day. Okay, friends, I'm very excited to introduce you to this concept called the model. It's actually a tool that partners with the thought download, and it's a tool that we're going to be using from this point forward in making sense as to why you do what you do, why you think and feel the way that you do, and how we can understand this and create greater purpose, greater direction, and greater intention behind your thoughts, feelings, actions, and results. Simply put, the model is made up of 5 components. We have circumstances, which are always neutral. These are data points, and these are the events that take place within our lives. We have our thoughts, feelings, actions, and results. Now, within the model, it always works in this order. Our circumstances trigger us to have a thought. From that thought, we experience a feeling or an emotion, such as happy or sad, frustrated, peaceful, excited, or nervous. Our emotions then drive us to take actions, and our actions create the results within our lives. These are the outcomes of our thoughts, feelings, and actions. So we're going to take this a step further when we come in our one-on-one appointments to ensure that you understand the different components and how they partner with the thought download. But for today, I'm going to give you the overview so that you become aware of this and it feels a little more familiar and it won't feel overwhelming when we step into our private session. Again, this is just one more way of looking at the model and understanding how it works together and how these different components build upon one another. The circumstances in our lives trigger our thoughts. Our thoughts cause us to have feelings. From our feelings, we take action, and sometimes we remain in a place of inaction. And I want you to know that that's a choice as well. From our actions, we create our results. So let's look at this just in a little bit more of a more thorough way. When you do your thought download, the majority of the things that you write on your paper are simply going to be thoughts. They're going to be subjective opinions about how you feel and what you think about the circumstances in your life. The majority of the dialogue that goes on within our minds and within our space are thoughts. We tend to have only a few things that we identify as circumstances. We tend to only have a few things that we recognize as being factual, as being the events within our lives that everyone would agree upon. And the circumstances within our lives can always be proven within a court of law because they are factual and everyone would agree upon them. So I'm going to give you some concrete examples because this week it's going to be important that you learn how to differentiate between what is a circumstance and what is a thought. So let's go from here for a moment. Okay, on our screen we have three very different pictures. I'm going to identify the difference between a circumstance and a thought with these three visuals. Now, if I were to tell you that I was going to get up at 5 a.m., this would be a fact. This would be an event. And when my alarm clock rings at 5 a.m., that has then created an event that everyone would agree upon. My alarm is set for 5 a.m. That is an exact time, and no one would argue that the alarm clock is ringing at 5 a.m. Okay? This is a neutral circumstance. And from this circumstance, from this data point, then we assign meaning with our thoughts. If I told you I was getting up at 5 a.m., you may think that is far too early. You're assigning a thought to a fact. Someone else may think that's not early enough. Can you see how your thoughts are subjective and they're more or less reflective of the meaning that you're assigning to what has taken place? Now, when it comes to the weather, let's say it's 80 degrees outside. This is a fact. This can be proven because we're looking at our thermostat, our thermometer, and everyone would agree that it's 80 degrees outside. Okay, so this is factual. No one would argue with this, and if we were to take a picture of it and bring it in front of a court of law, they would all agree that at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, it was 80 degrees outside. From this circumstance, people are going to attach meaning. Now, if I were to tell you it was 80 degrees outside, you may think, what a lovely day. It is so perfect. The weather is beautiful. If I were to tell someone else that it was 80 degrees outside, they may think, there's no way I'm going outside today. It's too hot. And then if I were to tell a third person that it was 80 degrees outside, they may think to themselves, 80 degrees is kind of chilly. I better grab a sweater since I'm going out. So the circumstance of 80 degrees can trigger and cause a variety of thoughts. 3 different people, 3 different meanings, 3 different thoughts assigned to the very same circumstance. Okay? Now, in our final picture, we can see a police officer is getting ready to write a ticket. When he writes that ticket, it becomes an event. It becomes a fact. If you have received a ticket, you have proof. You have evidence of an event that has occurred. Now, from having that ticket, you may believe, wow, I really need to watch my speed. This is very unfortunate that I got a ticket. If I receive a ticket, I may believe that officer is being so picky. I was only 5 miles over the speed limit. How ridiculous. I would assign a totally different meaning to the same event, to the same piece of evidence. Same ticket, 2 different thoughts get assigned because our circumstances trigger our thoughts. And our thoughts are always subjective. It's our opinion. It's what we choose to make the meaning of, or it's the meaning that we assign to what has happened or to what we're seeing as a data point, or to an event, the factual thing that has taken place in our lives. Let's take a really concrete example. Now, when we do a thought download, more often than not, we just let our thoughts come out on paper, and we don't judge them, we don't govern them, we don't direct them. This is called an unintentional model. We take a thought that's just there, it just came because it's on default, and it's just unintentional. That means it doesn't really have a focus, it doesn't have direction, it doesn't have purpose. And we want to understand why we're thinking this in our lives and what the end result is from this default thought. So we're going to plug it into the model, into what we call the unintentional model. Okay, so this is one way of using the model. And then I'm going to show you the contrast wherein we can use the model in a purposeful way to assign and create a better meaning. The circumstance in this model is that I weigh 200 pounds. This is a data point. If I step on the scale, everyone that looks at that scale or looks at the picture of the scale would agree that 200 pounds is the circumstance. It's the number that's being reflected on the scale. Okay? From this data point, I randomly assign the meaning, I can't believe I weigh this much. And when I have this thought, it causes me to feel frustrated. As I feel frustrated, then I take the action of eating cookies, not doing anything good in my behalf of furthering weight loss, and I experience sabotage. Okay? So my actions were fueled from my frustration, and they're actually defeating choices. They're defeating actions. I don't take action. I make a poor food choice by eating cookies, and I'm actually working against myself through my own choices. From this action, it creates the result of gaining weight and supporting the belief that I really weigh this much and I'm frustrated by it. Our result always can be looped back around to support and create evidence to support what we're thinking. So think about that for a moment. If we're gaining weight and we're experiencing dismay or frustration that we can't believe that we weigh this much, then it's going to be a negative cycle, and our result is going to be negative, and it's going to support this belief that we really weigh 200 pounds and that it's a negative thing. This is the unintentional thought model. This comes from our thought download, and the way that we can turn this around is we can be observant to this circumstance of 200 pounds, and we can be more neutral or more purposeful in how we want to think and feel about that data point. Now, if I wanted to be more intentional with my thought and more intentional with my model to create something that would serve me, then I would plug this into an intentional model. That means I'm taking direction. I'm directing my thought. I'm being purposeful. I'm being intentional with how I want to think, feel, act, and what I want to create as an end result from my circumstance. The circumstance always remains the same because no one would argue with that. It's factual. It's neutral. So in my intentional model, I could step on the scale and see that I'm 200 pounds. From this piece of information, I could choose to think, you know what? I take really good care of my body, and my body serves me beautifully. From this place of recognizing that my body serves me beautifully, I would feel a sense of compassion toward myself. And when I'm feeling compassion, then I take action that reflects being compassionate, and I eat wisely and I make good food choices. From eating wisely and from making good, nutritious food choices, my outcome is that I feel good about my body, and I recognize and celebrate these really good, purposeful choices. When I'm taking good care of myself by eating well and fueling my body well and celebrating my efforts, that comes back around to support my belief that I serve my body well, it serves me beautifully, and I take really good care of my body. So this is a purposeful and an intentional model that actually works to my good. It can work to my benefit. So we're going to come into this space and talk about this more and practice this more as we get more acquainted with how your thought downloads are coming into place and really working the model with the thought download to create a complete experience. Let's look at this model in another way. Let's say that your son received a D on the term paper. His unintentional thought may be, this teacher has never liked me. She grades me unfairly. So the circumstance of having the D, which is a fact, has triggered him to believe and think the teacher doesn't like him and that he gets graded unfairly. From this belief, he feels anger. The thought causes him to have the emotion of anger. And when he feels angry, then he chooses to do the very bare minimum for class. When his actions reflect doing the very bare minimum, then he feels resentful towards the teacher and frustrated. He chooses to not learn what is offered and he doesn't do his work. That is the result. He's doing the bare minimum in the class, he resents the teacher, and he's having a negative experience. From this result, it goes back to support the belief that the teacher doesn't like him and he feels that he's being graded unfairly. Now, your son could have the same experience of receiving the D on the term paper, but he could choose to have a different thought, feeling, action, and result. By putting this into the intentional model, he could look at this paper and look at the fact that he received the D, which is his data point, and it's neutral, and he could choose to believe, wow, I need to give myself more time to prepare and do my work. From this belief, he has a feeling of increased awareness. And from this emotion of awareness, that causes him and drives him to take action in allowing more time on his side to do his research and his writing. From this purposeful action, he then has the result of showing up more fully for himself. He shows up more fully for his work and allows more time to do his project, and he feels really good about his efforts. He's created a very different result because he had a very different thought. That is the difference between the unintentional and the intentional model. Now, we will look at this together in greater depth when we have your private appointment. I don't want you to feel overwhelmed at this point. What we're doing is we're just becoming familiar with the model. And as the days progress, you're going to be so excited and so pleased with how much sense it's going to make and how easily it falls into place and how comfortable you get with this practice. Friends, I want to invite you to start looking at your thought download and asking yourself, is this a circumstance or is this a thought? Do your thought download effortlessly, just as you were doing so last week. And then start to be objective and look through your thought download. Take a highlighter or take a pen and either circle or highlight the circumstances on your page. As I shared before, we really don't put a whole lot of circumstances down when we do the thought download. The majority of our writing is made up of thoughts, opinions, interpretations, because that's how we experience the world. As you're getting familiar with identifying the circumstances, ask yourself these questions. Would everyone agree upon this being a fact? And if the answer is yes, then you know that you have a circumstance. If the answer is no, then it is a thought, and you won't want to circle it and you won't want to highlight it. Another question to ask is this something that can be proven? Is this a piece of evidence that could go to a court of law and everyone would agree upon it? Is it a data point? Can I prove it? If the answer is yes, then you know you have a circumstance, and that is neutral. The thoughts that you have about that circumstance, that's the meaning that you're choosing to attach. That's how you're choosing to look at the circumstance and the opinion that you hold towards that circumstance. Finally, you can ask yourself the final question, would someone else have a different opinion about this fact? Then you know you're identifying your thought. If the answer is yes, if someone else could look at the circumstance and take a different thought away, you have a circumstance and you have your own thought. And then you can loop back up and be like, yes, someone else could assign a different meaning to this. They could have a different opinion to this sentence, to this data point, to this event or this activity. Here again, you're proving that it's a circumstance and not a thought, opinion, or a subjective interpretation of the circumstance. Okay, friends, you are going to do just fantastic with this new thought management technique that I've introduced. Get to work. Believe in yourself, believe in your capability to not only create a food plan and to honor this commitment, but to also start seeing the differences between your C's and your T's. As a quick wrap up, when you do your reading within your second week segment, you're going to notice that we shorten down the words within the model from circumstance, thought, feeling, action, and result. We shorten that down just to the first letter of the word, CTFAR. That's going to make it go very, very quickly for you. And use the worksheet that's been provided. Make copies of that worksheet so that every single day you can start getting more and more familiar and more comfortable with the tool of the model and recognizing how your thoughts are serving you or not serving you in the results that you're creating in your life. Okay, friends. I am excited to see you in your private appointment. Please continue to do your journaling. Be thoughtful to what you're choosing to plan for your protocol. Do this 24 hours in advance. And if you have any thoughts or questions before we come into our private appointment, send me an email and I will reply just as quickly as possible. Have a beautiful day and I will see you soon.